The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Now, the first thing I want to talk about is food shortages and food prices.
Well, you're just going to get right into it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
most people might not know, but your background, you actually own some farms in Chile. So if you could give us kind of
I started an agriculture business there some years ago, and it's grown to become quite large. We specialize.
So since you have that expertise, what are your views as to what's happening with fertilizer, potash, not being able to get potentially natural gas from Russia, and that impacting the fertilizer costs in the United States and all around the world?
It's interesting. I had a conversation with Joel Salatin just yesterday. We were talking about this, and he's an organic guy. And so he just, he kind of shrugs his shoulders and he's like, okay, well, I don't use any of that stuff. So I'm good, and it's interesting. So let's start like big picture, and then we can get a little bit more granular, because there's some things happening in the agriculture sector in particular that a lot of people don't know about. So some of this is going to be inside baseball, but from a big picture perspective, you got the president of the United States running around when he's not, shaking hands with thin air and bumbling around stage like a zombie, not sure where to go, and they got to turn around and go over here. He's telling people, get ready for this huge food crisis, and I think really scaring people in a way that, and I kind of look at that and I scratch my head and I think, is that the dementia, or is that some kind of political calculus where he's really, he's trying to. Maybe that's like there's a certain genius there, right? Where he's trying to sort of under promise and over deliver in a way where he's trying to get people set their expectation it's going to be death and destruction, and then if it falls short of that, he can say, see what a great job I did. We didn't have this crazy food shortage that I predicted. So because I look at it, and Joel and I were talking about this yesterday, and we're both thinking like, there's plenty of food in the world. There's plenty of productive capacity. That's not a problem. There's absolutely zero problem with food supply. There's no problem with food production. There's still plenty of great soil in the world. There's still plenty of sunshine. So like none of this is a problem. What is a problem, and people are making a big deal about, Russia and fertilizer, et cetera. Okay, yeah, Russia produces certain chemicals that go into fertilizer, but there are so many things about that. Number one, like these are not complicated. I mean, the most fertilizer is what they call NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Right. Reverse those: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So NPK, it's not difficult to come by. I mean, they could produce that anywhere. So the fact that Russia does it, it's sort of like the rare earth scam, in my opinion. It's just clever marketing. They say it's rare earths. It's like Iceland and Greenland. You just make a clever name there to dupe people into thinking something. But there's nothing rare about rare earths, and there's certainly nothing rare about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So this is really, I think, something that's been blown up a whole lot, both by the media and by the president of the United States. The supply chain difficulties, that's definitely has an impact, because at the moment there are some fertilizer manufacturers that don't have the ability to deliver. And global transportation, I mean, in agriculture in general, that's a big problem, because there are a lot of fruits and vegetables and meats and things like that get shipped fresh. And the bigger problem really is global supply chain bottlenecks prevent food from being delivered fresh. So you got a lot of, you get meats. You heard about that story about that cargo ship that had all those like luxury cars. It was on fire. Imagine that, like, though, with like beef, right? And I'm sure all the vegans are cheering right now. But I mean, there's going to be entire container ships where beef and pork and whatever, zucchinis from Southern Africa, whatever, all this stuff just rots, because you got a container ship and one guy on the crew gets COVID and the whole ship is dead. The entire vessel is deadlined. And just these sorts of things, or everything gets put on a boat and it makes its way across the ocean, and all of a sudden you get to Shanghai and they go, oh, sorry, we're closed.
Right.
And so that's the sort of stuff that's really causing problems. Fertilizer, these chemicals for the most part are non-perishable. So the fertilizer scaremongering, I think, has been blown totally out of proportion. There's so much sunlight in the world. There's so much soil in the world. So it's not really a big deal. There are other issues afoot though. And a lot of them really tend to revolve more around transportation, and the serious inflation of packaging and containers, which is, I mean, you'd be surprised how much that impacts food prices. People think, oh, it's oil, it's energy, whatever. Honestly, it's, there's so many factors. I've been writing a lot about inflation, all these little hidden factors. The price of corrugated paper is a huge factor, honestly, in food price inflation, because all those, these mounds of bananas that end up in the grocery store, like these get packed into cardboard boxes. And the price of cardboard has gone up so much. And that, what's a big reason for that is all the e-commerce. Is every time people order stuff on Amazon, right? Used to be, there'd be, companies, whatever, Walmart would order stuff and buy the pallet full, and basically be one pallet and stuff would be strapped in, right, to the pallet, and there'd be very little cardboard involved in that. There'd be very little, plastic containers and clamshells, et cetera. And then it would be unpacked and put onto the shelves eventually once it made its way through distribution centers. Now what happens is every little tiny thing gets put into its own individual box. My wife ordered something the other day from Amazon. It arrived and it was, I don't know what, it was like a new iron or something like that. I mean, just something silly. And, the iron comes in its own little box,
right?
Like the manufacturer's like box. And then they put it in like another box, so it was the box inside the box, whatever. And then, she ordered like 2 or 3 things, and it was like 3 different individual packages that the UPS guy brought to the house. And so each one of those was a box within a box, right? And so everybody's doing that. So you think about that times literally hundreds of millions of people. And so the demand that has on corrugated paper, right? And the same thing with like plastic clamshells, or like just like plastic wrapping and all these sorts of things that, like, it's like crazy to think about how much of that stuff is used in the global food system. And so that stuff is literally going through the roof. We're seeing, like, in our business, we saw 300-400% increases on that stuff, right? So it's like, it's not the fertilizer.
Yeah, that's
so
fascinating.
We can look at them and go, we can get phosphorus from, we can get phosphorus from all sorts of places. We, like, in our company, we mix our own fertilizer. So it's not really a big deal. The raw materials are relatively easy to come by. We got lots of supply. It's not really an issue. It's the paper, it's the cardboard. It's this sort of stuff that actually matters. It's the crewman on some, Chinese container ship that gets the sniffles and they deadline the entire vessel. That's the stuff that actually impacts the global food system.
Wow, that's a great insight. I never would have thought about the whole cardboard angle, but when you're saying that, it makes so much sense, because we lock everyone in a cage, right? And then so the only thing they can do is order things on Amazon. So then that increases demand exponentially for these cardboard boxes, and then it kind of people just get in the habit of ordering from Amazon. So they do it now even when they're out of lockdown. And this creates all this excess demand, and the suppliers can't meet that demand for all these additional reasons. And therefore it affects the food prices and everything else that we buy, and it increases inflation. I mean, it's just the domino effect is hard for people to get their head around.